Today, the court puts bump stocks back in civilian hands. To do so, it casts aside Congress's definition of machine gun and seizes upon—
I hate that. Civilian hand. You're just civilians. You're human beings, guys. You're Americans, but you're human beings. The Supreme Court, they're always looking down their horn rim glasses at you. Always looking down at you. You are subjects. They're the masters, the arbiters, the interpretation of the Constitution. You will have freedom if we say you will have freedom. You civilians, you subjects.
One that is inconsistent with the ordinary meaning of the statutory text and unsupported by context or purpose. When I see a duck that walks like a duck, when I see a bird that walks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, I call that bird a duck. So
when I see a Second Amendment that acts like the Second Amendment, that looks like the Second Amendment, that it, in all practical aspects, forms the shall not be infringed juggernaut of the Second Amendment, then I call it the Second Amendment. But when I see something that is violating, that's going out of its way to violate the Second Amendment for safety reasons, well, that throws red flags all over the place. And it just should, the hair on the back of your neck should stand up every time you encounter tyrannical language like this. What the frick?
Mayor read her dissent from the bench, a rare move underlining her disagreement. It was actually the first time that she did that this year. And she said, this is not a hard case. All the textual evidence points to the same interpretation. Whereas the majority had to ignore common sense and rely on obscure technical arguments. Quote, its interpretation requires 6 diagrams and an animation to decipher the meaning of the statutory text. She said that the decision in effect enables gun users and manufacturers to circumvent federal law.
Actually, she's arguing against herself. This is not a hard case. All of the textual evidence points to the same interpretation. Its interpretation requires 6 diagrams and an animation to decipher the meaning of the statutory text. She's actually deriding the majority's interpretation of what the ATF did with regard to the National Firearms Act of 1934. It enables gun users and manufacturers to circumvent what? Federal law. What should Sotomayor and all the other justices be primarily concerned with? They should be concerned with people who circumvent the Second Amendment, and they're not. They're constantly, I mean, the king has no clothes here. They might as well lift up their robes and show us what they got, because they are showing that they're absolute hypocrites and tyrants.
And starting soon, they will be able to do that. These devices will once again be available, and plenty of people are excited about this. Not all of them want to go on some sort of killing spree with these devices, but you have to imagine that if you do fancy yourself the next mass shooter, today is a particularly good day for you.
Yeah.
Here goes chunky yogurt.
So there's 2 different issues here. One is who gets to regulate this, ATF or does Congress have to pass a law? That's a perfectly legitimate issue and one that you could have honest disagreement about. Now, the reason the ATF says we get to regulate it is because it's already in essence a machine gun, and we're allowed to regulate machine guns because that law has already been passed. So then that becomes the question of that the Supreme Court has to decide. Is it a machine gun or isn't it? And so Thomas makes an absurd argument that it's not. Like technically, he says, when you press it, you have to do something else, kind of like, whoa, and then it fires like a machine gun. I read it, it was gobbledygook. And by the way, if you're a gun owner out there, you're like, oh, you don't even know that. You know, bump stock, it fires every quarter of a second. You don't know about guns to make these laws. No, I know. We showed you the video. It's a goddamn machine gun. It fires hundreds of bullets in a minute. It's super, I mean, we showed, it's a goddamn machine gun. So you just stop lying. If you want machine guns to be legal, just say I want machine guns to be legal, and that sucks.
Okay. I don't want machine guns to be legal because it's not a illegal issue. I want to be free, because legality and illegality means somebody made something law or retracted some law, like prohibition. Prohibition was a law from 1920 to 1933. I could care less about legality and illegality. I want to be free, to be left alone to buy whatever I want. I'm not looking for anybody to make something legal so that I can have permission to have a machine gun. It's not about that. We got to really get our heads screwed on straight here. If you're not free to have a machine gun, if you're not free to have a Glock, if you're not free to have a 15 capacity magazine for your Glock or a Smith & Wesson or an AR-15 or an AK-47 or an M16 or an M60, if you're not free to have a 50 caliber whatever, you're not free. You're not free. So when they're saying, just say you want machine guns to be legal. No, I'm not asking for machine guns to be legal. I'm not asking for bump stocks to be legal. I'm not asking political parasites to do anything for me. Just leave me alone. Let me be free. That's why I can't stand when I see First Amendment auditors go, no, we have permission to film here. Oh, you have permission like you're a little child? Let's change our terminology. Let's change our outlook. Let's change the paradigm. Let's change the conversation. I am free. I'm an American. I'm free to film here. I'm a human being. I have the freedom to do what I'm doing. I'm not harming anybody. I'm not threatening to harm anybody. I'm not damaging property. I'm not stealing property. I am free to operate in the capacity I'm operating in. Now, the only next question is, are you here to infringe on my freedoms, officer? Or politician or judge?
That I want to pass that law, but they're not legal, and that's a goddamn machine gun. So technically, it doesn't mean a goddamn thing, man. That's just saying I want to pretend the Second Amendment is about heavy weaponry and God, the founding fathers wanted us to have tanks and RPGs and nukes.
That's another thing. I don't care. I mean, like, it's good to go back to what the founding fathers said, but the founding fathers also said some pretty messed up stuff. The founding fathers did some pretty messed up stuff. The founding fathers made laws that you would be like, the Alien and Sedition Act? Are you kidding me? Some resisted it, but some were for it. Now, if there are things that were said that are in accord with natural law and freedom, and you don't have a higher claim over my life and property than me, I don't have a higher claim over your life and property than you, it's never right to initiate unjust force and violence on peaceful people who haven't done anything wrong, and overall, generally, to live in the frame, in the bubble of the golden rule, got no problem with that. Got no problem with those quotes. That's why I constantly quote Abraham Lincoln had some good quotes, but he was an utter tyrant. That's why I quote Samuel Adams and James Madison and Benjamin Franklin. Some of those quotes, never in an argument, never appeal to the majority and never appeal to an authority. Always appeal to logic, to reason, to consistency, to things which eschew hypocrisy. That's what you appeal to, because those are the things that rise to the top and are right, whether people recognize it or not. I mean, a lie is a lie, even if everyone believes it, right? And the truth is the truth, even if no one believes it. It's not a good idea to measure yourself by the majority or by authorities. It's not a good idea to have a worldview or have an opinion based on what other people say. You need to test it for yourself and find out, is it right or is it wrong? And what's my criteria by which I judge right and wrong? Is it right for me to blanket make a bump stock ban? And what does it mean when I ban something? And then I create a law or some kind of policy that bans your use of it. What's going to happen if I find you with something that I told you not to have? You know what's next? You know what a law is? Laws are the opinions of politicians, and all of those laws are backed by the threat of threats and violence and evil. Evil will befall you if you don't do what the government tells you to do, or if you do what the government tells you not to do. And the insanity of thinking that something that was okay this minute is not only not okay in the next minute, but if I catch you with what I told you not to have, which was perfectly to have 60 seconds before, if I catch you with it now, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to penalize you. I'm going to take money from you. I'm going to drag you from your house if you continue to possess this. Nothing could be more clear than like prohibition. What evils 13 years of prohibition brought to America? But 60 seconds before midnight, depending on your time zone, did you realize people in New York, prohibition was illegal and you were a criminal in New York before you were a criminal in Oklahoma or Texas or California? Isn't that insane? You could do something like New York time right now is what? 7:29, and it's 6:29 right now in Oklahoma. When prohibition went into effect at 6:29, let's say, I can still buy, sell, and transport alcohol for the next 60 minutes. But when that 60 minutes comes upon me, now that officer can pull me over and throw me into a box, put the cuffs on me, kidnap me, ruin my life, because politicians in Washington's District of Criminals said it's illegal now. But 60 seconds ago, it wasn't illegal. But now it's illegal in Oklahoma. But in California, you got 2 hours to buy, sell, transport, and trade alcohol. But prior to that, it was fine until they said, nope, you can't do it. Now it's a law. And they have the audacity to call it a law. Like the laws of physics. I mean, mankind can be so freaking pompous and unreasonable and illogical and hypocritical and inconsistent and evil. So let's call it what it is. When you say something is illegal, you're actually equating that on a moral scale, and you're saying that which is illegal is immoral. And then in 1933, they made it illegal again. Oh, now you can do it. Now there's some restrictions that go along with that, but yeah, you can, for the most part, you can have alcohol in your cupboards now. That's insane to me. And that any of us would ever go along with a bump stock ban. And just exponentiate that out. What they did for, alcohol prohibition or the drug war or bump stock bans, or you can have this, you can't have high capacity magazines in New York or California, but you can have in this part of the country. Give me the inconsistency and hypocrisy is off the charts. And that anybody would be for this or engage in the political process that spawns all this nonsense is just far beyond my ability to rationalize. Far beyond it. If you're on the same page with me, just put a 1 in the room. If not, put a 2, and I'd like to talk to you because this is kind of an interesting psychological little experiment we got going on here. Go ahead, Chunky Yogurt.
That's why, man. It has nothing to do with the militia. It has everything to do with the militia. So let me ask you this. So here's the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That is, in order to keep a militia that we need some weapons, right? That's not, who cares about militias? Who cares if they exist or not?
That's not even, talk about chopping something up, man. There's two thoughts: a well-regulated militia, and then just the fact, okay, a well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of a free state. Because, somebody can come, if you don't have a well-regulated armed militia protecting this geographic location or whatever, anybody can come in and just completely overpower you. That's the first thought. The second thought is the right of the people, whether you're in a militia or not. They're both standalone. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. They're both true at the same time. And there's nothing in there that says what kind of arm you can have, if there's a limitation on the number of arms you can have or ammunition capacity or anything like that. Nothing like that. Or that the people need to be a part of the militia to keep that. It'd be a good idea if you were, because now that militia in that region who has more people who are armed and trained can more easily protect that geographical boundary. Unfreaking believable.
Machine guns kill each other. And that's why you're not honest. You're nowhere near honest. So
the guy who just proved that he's dishonest is telling you you're not honest.
What happened to the moderate right-wing justice? So don't worry. I mean, we got a couple of freaks on there like Alito and Thomas and stuff. But oh my God, Justice Roberts, he's so reasonable. And all Kavanaugh is surprising. No, 6-3. So what's going to happen here? This is a stone cold fact. Literally hundreds of more people, and probably thousands, will die because of this decision. Because it's not like the mass shootings wouldn't have happened. They would still happen. And so in a mass shooting, you might have 7 people who die without a bump stock. With a bump stock, it's going to be 70 or 17 or 27. If you're arguing that that's not going to happen, you're being.
I mean, that is a possibility, but making it illegal doesn't stop those things. As a matter of fact, when you make guns illegal in certain zones, those zones become the epicenters of horrible, horrible mass shooting crimes. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever noticed that in the last, 40 or 50 years, a high percentage of the mass shootings that have happened in gun-free zones? How can that be? If it's a gun-free zone, how did that gun make its way into that zone? How did that armed madman think that he could actually take advantage of the other people who are disempowered? And that's what gun-free zones are. It's if you are a law abider, And I wouldn't suggest that you advertise that because that's pretty shameful. Oh, I abide by the law. Oh, really? Do you abide by all the laws? Because there's a lot of laws out there, high percentage of which are extremely evil and immoral. But if you're a law abider and you see that no gun-free zone or no guns beyond this point and you disarm, guess who's not going to disarm? People who don't give a damn about that sign, who don't give a damn about the laws. They're going to be the ones who are empowered, and you're the one who made the conscious decision to obey the sign and disempower yourself. But Brian, if I get caught, the feds are going to take me to jail for 10 years if I'm on post office property. Yeah, that sucks, right? That shows you that nobody in the federal government cares about your rights. You don't have to let anybody know that you are not going to, you're not so stupid as to disarm because a sign tells you to, or because some political parasite made a law that said you can't have a gun in this zone. Gun-free zone to me is a fish in a barrel zone. If I was evil-minded and I wanted to use a personal protection device to wreak the maximum amount of destruction without any kind of pushback, you better believe I'm going to a gun-free zone. That mall in Indiana where Elisha Dickin was with his fiancée getting food in that food court was a gun-free zone. Guess what Elisha Dickin did? He disobeyed the law. And if he didn't disobey the law, he wouldn't have been able to take out the active shooter who had a more powerful weapon than he did. He used his Glock. I think it was a Glock 22, which is a 40 caliber from according to the reports, from 40 yards away, took out the shooter in less than 15 seconds in a gun-free zone. What is that an example of? And I hate to sound like the NRA, but they are right about this because a broken clock is right twice a day. The answer to a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. And if it wasn't for Elisha Dickin, a whole lot of people would have perished. But he disobeyed the law to do that. Disobeying the law is sometimes the absolute right thing to do. What if Elisha Dickin wasn't armed? How many people would we have read about in the newspaper the next day? And you don't hear the Young Turks championing the cause and hailing Elisha Dickin. How about Stephen Williford from the Sutherland Springs thing that happened in Texas at that church? The barefoot hero, they called him. Ran outside the house barefoot with his AR-15, took out the shooter before the police got here. How many people would have died if Stephen Williford and Elisha Dickin, and the list goes on, guys. What about Johnny Hurley? How many cops did Johnny Hurley save in Arvada, Colorado that day? While the 3 cops said, well, we're not equipped to take out the shooter. All we have is handguns, and he has an AR-15. So they quivered in fear inside of the Arvada Police Department headquarters while Johnny Hurley with a handgun sprung into action and took out the shooter. And what does he get for his troubles? The Arvada Police Department off Johnny Hurley, thinking that, oh my God, he's got a gun in his hand. He's the bad guy. Johnny Hurley saved so many, because that guy in Arvada, Colorado was going after cops, and Johnny Hurley stopped the mayhem before it even started. Basically, he did. The guy did take out 1 cop. So I just got to say, man, this whole gun control debate and the Supreme Court made a great decision they made a pro Second Amendment decision. No, they didn't.